Agamemnon and the Achaeans, who attacked Troy in the Trojan War, were not from Greece. In fact, the war did not take place at the end of the Bronze Age. Everything you think you knew about it, what they've been telling you, is wrong, except for one thing. Troy really was Troy. But it was not the end of the Bronze Age that was the Trojan War. It was Troy too. It was when Heinrich Schliemann identified the treasure of Priam. He was right. Heinrich Schliemann was right about Troy, but he was wrong about Mycenae. Because Mycenae was not in Greece. That town did not exist at the time of the sacking of Troy too. Mycenae was here, in Scandinavia, where I am now. So follow this video. I will give you the reason for why it was necessary to reevaluate this and what the map looks like in reality. And in the last video you can see when I visited Stenshuvud, which is identified as the real original Mycenae. But it's not the origin of the kingdom here, because that is Argos, and that will come in the next book. So who am I? I'm a physical geographer, doctor in physical geography, Ulf Erlingsson, and I have studied European prehistory and the development of the landscape from the peak of the Ice Age and onwards my whole life. So, welcome and let's get into the video. So, as you see, we have a problem here in the timeline for what happened. This is 1180 BC. This is the time when they suppose that Troy fell, that the Trojan War took place. Because what happened was that Heinrich Schliemann, he identified Troy as the place where the Trojan War took place. And he found Priam's treasure, as he described it. And then he identified the supposedly Homeric Mycenae in Achaea, in Greece. So we had the city of Agamemnon, the attacker, and the city that was sacked, the city of Priam, Troy. But then scholars were able to date the sacking of Troy and the treasure of Priam. And it turns out it was from around 2250 to 2300 BC. And Mycenae, the Mycenaean culture, did not exist back then. So then they said, okay, if it was not that horizon of destruction in Troy, then it must have been the other horizon of destruction, which is around 1180 BC, and which coincides with the Bronze Age collapse, when all the civilizations in the Near East collapsed except Egypt. That was the time of the Sea Peoples. But then a problem occurs in that they find the Hittite tablets with cuneiform script that date back, I think here, this is the Hittite civilization. And now we have written records from here, and it does not mention the Trojan War. It mentions Vilusa, which obviously is the same as Ilion, Troy, but it does not mention the war, so how to make it square? And this has been a headache. And now lately, the exact date, because Mycenae, the supposedly Mycenae in Peloponnesos in Greece, was also sacked in the Bronze Age collapse. And it turns out that Mycenae was sacked before Troy. So, I mean, it's completely impossible, out of the question, if these dates are right, that the Mycenaeans from Greece would have sacked Troy. This does not match up. And what happens? Well, then scholars start to think about, well, maybe it wasn't a war, the Trojan War. Maybe it was just invented back to where they've been for centuries, if not millennia. However, if you have three things that do not match, Troy, Mycenae, and the event, the Trojan War, then there are three options where you can do. You can say that the war is wrong, it didn't take place, but you can also say that one of the two cities are misidentified. And which one would it be? Well, let's look at the two sacking horizons of Troy. This early one coincides perfectly because it is first there is a destruction of the city outside of the walls, and then you can see inside of the walls people like move inside for a number of years, and then there is the complete destruction. So the archaeology matches perfectly with the events of the Trojan War, with the long siege and then the destruction. Whereas this event does not. And the buried treasure matches perfectly. Again, they were under siege. They buried the gold so they wouldn't steal it in case they got in. They eventually got in. They destroyed the entire city and nobody dug up the gold afterwards. It's a perfect match for the destruction of Troy too. And since the Homeric epos is so detailed, it's virtually impossible to imagine that anybody would have been able to write that with so many details matching reality and geography if it hadn't been true. One of the three things that is most easily replaceable is the identity of Mycenae. And let me show you this here. This is a manuscript before it came out in book form in English by Felice Vinci, Homer in the Baltic. This is the direct translation of the Italian original. When it came out in English, it had another name, I don't remember what. So I went through this, and he has some very compelling arguments for why the Achaeans were in the north of Europe and not in Greece. The environment, the description matches northern Europe much better than Greece. However, he's, as I mentioned, Italian. He is not a geographer. He's no expert on Scandinavian geography. So his attempts to locate these places in Scandinavia, in my opinion, is mostly a failure. They're based on name similarities, and that's not the way to do it. Since I am a physical geographer and I am an expert in what has happened here, I set out to look for it based on the date, starting with the date of the event. Because the first thing you have to do is to create a paleo map, because Scandinavia back then did not look anything like it does now. Due to land uplift, the coastline was completely different in big parts, most of Scandinavia. Only in Denmark was it more or less similar. And the result of that research, I have now published in the book, Finding Achaia. And I have mapped out all these places in an atlas, in about 180 pages with almost 100 maps. And let me tell you, it is a groundbreaking result, because Mycenae, in my opinion, I will say, without a shadow of a doubt, Mycenae was Stenshuvud. There are so many things that match. The geography of Homeros matches Scandinavia much better than it matches Greece. And we are back here. So then you may ask, well, what about this? Well, I will leave that for a future book and a future video. You can do your own thinking for a while. So, with that, I think I will not get into it much more. This is enough. I just uploaded a video about Mycenae Stenshuvud. You can go and look at that. But I will keep publishing videos. I think this is enough for for the introduction and the presentation of the book, which is available for ordering online. I will leave a link in the description.